And
Oh, wait a
we're
minute.
what's that? What happened?
Oh, hold on. Did
Oh,
you? Oh, it doesn't. Yeah, it's connected. Okay. Are we live?
we're back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy.
I got an error message, but I see that I'm recording, so we should be fine.
Okay, great. I mean, you are on an older class starship. Over here on our Galaxy class starship, we rarely have these issues.
Right. Well, I've been overrun by the Borg, so
Uh, Doctor, we finally arrived at the best of both worlds, part one. We're here. The
that's
last
it.
the last episode of the season.
The last episode of the series. That's right.
Oh no, the series. Oh, I guess you meant it in a British way, didn't you? Um, what's going on here? What is that?
This is the Borg.
Well, what is that? Is that like a
It's a playset. His head
oh?
opens up, and this actually references a later episode. This is
Is that Hugh?
yeah, and then this is that base in the episode where Hugh teams up with Nora.
Oh,
Yeah. Yep.
wow. Play sets. Do they still make play sets? Are those still? Is that still a thing?
There's not that many play sets anymore, and certainly no Star Trek play sets.
Wow.
The last Star Trek movie had a bridge play set that you would build when you would buy figures and all that. But that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about
The best of both worlds.
Locutus of Borg.
I am Locutus of Borg.
So I'm assuming you're going to do the summary.
I was thinking we could probably just do it together. When did you see the episode? Oh, look who's back there. We got to pause for a moment because Emma.
Why, who's back there?
Look, it's Arthur. Don't you see him back there? He's in the
Oh
window.
no, because my recording window is here. So
Oh, gotcha.
oh, there's Arthur.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. That's
all
we're
right.
supposed to pause the show anytime Arthur appears on screen for Emma. So there you go, Emma. We just paused the show for you. Shall we get to it?
Let's engage the Borg.
Let's engage. We have engaged the Borg. So the crew of the Enterprise encounter a distress signal, is it? Like from a planet? When they go to investigate, they think they're beaming down to the center of town, but lo and behold, there's a giant crater where the whole city used to be, and it's much like the signature of the Borg. And so they alert Starfleet immediately, and a task force is sent over. Admiral and Commander Shelby. What was the Admiral's name again? Was it Hansen?
It is Hansen, J.P. Hansen.
Yeah. See, I knew I had it in my head somewhere. Anyways,
By the way, was the
yeah,
voice of God in Star Trek V.
that's the same voice of God.
That's the voice of God in Star Trek V, J.P. Hansen.
I wondered if I could ask you a question, Doctor.
Go ahead.
What does God need with a starship? Okay.
You have a singular wit, Doctor.
Yes. Oh, Doctor. Anyways, so we get Admiral Hansen and Commander Shelby come aboard, and they're like, we've been preparing for this for a year since you encountered the Borg, but to be honest, we're nowhere near ready, but we're going to try our best. We're amassing an armada to gather at Wolf 359 to engage the Borg, and hopefully we will defeat them. Anyways, that's the plan. So the Enterprise is already on the Borg's tail, so they figured maybe they can.
Just a Borg cube here.
Oh, it's awesome. Is that Micro Machine?
Yes.
And
the Enterprise is engaging the Borg.
We're totally distracted in this episode. We got to get come on, let's get back together here. You and your toys, the toy master. So now we had the Enterprise on its tail, and they go aboard, and the Borg ignore them as always until they figure out that they could probably do something with the energy distribution nodes and disrupt everything. And so they start messing with the Borg, and the Borg are incapacitated for a little while, but then they immediately are able to repair their ship, of course, as always, and they chase the Enterprise. Enterprise gets caught in a nebula for a little while. And then there's a really wonderful scene in which we can talk about with Guinan and Picard in 10 Forward, just before they have to confront the Borg again, and Picard is kidnapped. It's horrifying. It's like such a shocker. Anyways, he's taken by the Borg and informed that he is to become the voice of the Borg for the humans. So as the humans will be assimilated, they will hear the beautiful Shakespearean prominence and cadence of Jean-Luc Picard, letting them know that resistance is futile.
Indeed.
And anyways, am I getting it right so far? So then, okay. Yeah. So then anyways, now the crew are left to they're in a shock. They don't know what to do. Captain Picard's been kidnapped. They attempt to retrieve. Well, anyways, Riker has to kind of assume that Picard's lost, that he's dead. But they do attempt to retrieve him in this awesome maneuver where the Enterprise saucer. Oh, we forgot. Sorry. In the meantime.
Even Arthur's looking at you.
What's going on, Arthur? What did I skip? You're getting into the second episode. Oh, shiitakes. It's all in.
This is all. Yes. No, sorry. We can't. Sorry. No spoilers.
Okay, sorry. I went too far.
The line must be drawn here. No further.
All right, Doctor, back me up here. That's it, right? Oh no. Okay, so Riker.
The greatest cliffhanger of all time.
This is true.
You're just like leapfrogged over it.
Yeah,
Shall I do the summary?
Yeah, finish up for me. Let's go back to the nebula. Let's go back to
the beginning.
Oh no. Okay, let's do it.
Let's go back to the beginning.
We're going back to the start.
So the Enterprise is at the site of what Starfleet Command thinks is an incursion into the Alpha Quadrant by the Borg. And Hansen brings Shelby. I don't know if you mentioned. Yeah, you did mention Shelby. And Shelby is heading up the Borg initiative in Starfleet, and she's looking for Riker's job.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, Riker, I totally skipped the whole. I was too excited, Doctor. I was too excited.
This is a Riker episode, ladies and gentlemen. At last, and Riker has been offered the command of the Melbourne, and he didn't even tell Picard. Even Picard is clueless as to what? You turned down another one? What's going on? And Shelby is bucking for his job. And so there's a lot of tension between Riker and Shelby as they try to establish that this is in fact the Borg. And well, the Borg show up, so then it kind of, yeah, okay, it is the Borg. And they go ahead and they engage the Borg, and they really don't make they don't make a dent in it at all. Not much. They manage to find that fluctuation of the phasers and all that stuff. And that's Shelby's idea, and eventually they end up in that nebula and all that stuff. The Mutara Nebula from Star Trek II.
It is the Mutara Nebula too.
And
the Mutara Nebula,
because the Enterprise is trying to hold them off while the fleet, and I believe the Admiral mentions it's 40 ships.
Mm-hmm.
So a fleet of 40 ships.
It's an armada, as a matter of fact.
It's an armada. Are converging at Wolf 359. And the Enterprise really, well, the Borg are after Picard.
They are right. They make it
And
known.
everybody is sort of taken by surprise by this because they've never been interested in any individuals, even when they go aboard the Borg ship. So they're confused. Why are they interested in Picard? And when they leave the nebula, they engage the Borg. The Borg manage to take Picard, and they go aboard. Or Riker takes command. He's about to lead the away team, but in probably one of her best moments, Troy stands up and she's like, "No, you are now captain of the Enterprise. You cannot lead the away team." And Riker just gives this face like, "Ugh,
I know.
you know, all the times I told Picard, and here I am in the same situation." So Shelby leads the away team, and it's Worf, it's Crusher, and Data, and Shelby, and they end up finding that Picard is in fact no longer human. He has been Borgified.
I am Locutus of Borg.
Right.
Resistance is futile. Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us. That was the butt of that was the source of many juvenile jokes in middle school and high school. Anyways,
I missed all of those.
go on.
I missed all those juvenile jokes. So the away team comes back and they inform Riker that Picard is lost. I believe Worf has a very emotional response.
He is a Borg.
He is a Borg.
No, it was more like he is a Borg. It seemed like he was crying a little. I don't know. Anyways, go on.
That whiny Klingon. And now, meanwhile, Wesley and Geordi have been working on turning the deflector dish of the Enterprise into a massive weapon, and because it's really the largest beaming device they have on the ship, and it's nowhere near ready, but they're going to make it ready because, you know, Locutus comes on the view screen and basically says what you just said, you know, you will service us. So Riker, in his grandest moment in Star Trek history, in his Star Trek career, just faces the view screen and fire. And then you hear that music.
Dun,
that
dun,
music.
dun.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 you know, and it's just like, that was that moment, that cliffhanger ushered in the longest summer any of us ever experienced, because we were literally, I fell off the couch, I was on the floor, oh my God.
It's a big deal. I remember, as far as you know, I guess you call them nerdgasms now, right? Like this episode was full of amazing points, and yeah.
It was
I think this is one of those situations where at the beginning of the episode we go ahead and just reveal that, for me anyways, and for you, I think, Doctor, I think it's safe to presume that this episode's a 10.
This is an 11, sir.
Ooh, it's an okay. I agree.
This is off the scale. Yeah, this is a 10, and this is probably the best Star Trek ever got. Next Generation ever got for me.
I think, I don't know. I mean, it's, in many ways it is probably the best episode, but I think that Star Trek: The Next Generation just changes from this point forward. Like it goes in a kind of a different tone after this. I don't know if that makes sense. At least that's what my recollection is, that season 3 is kind of like the dividing line between I guess where Star Trek: The Next Generation finally matures into a show that's more confident and more, you know, willing to do what it does, to be itself, if that makes any sense to you.
Well, I think I mean, the idea of having the cliffhanger is something that we weren't really used to in Star Trek. You know, the original show didn't have cliffhangers that would go from season to season.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, perhaps with the movies, we had semi cliffhangers. I mean, you know, there's the ending of Star Trek 2, and you're like, oh, well, you know, how is Spock going to come back? And Star Trek 3 certainly leaves us in a bit of a cliffhanger. But this was the first one where, I mean, certainly, you know, losing Picard, you know, at the end of by the end of the episode, I just remember, and when I rewatched it, it works so well. You really believe that we've lost Picard. I remember when I was a kid thinking, "Oh, Riker's going to take over."
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you think about it, if you've been watching since the beginning, we'd lost Tasha. We'd lost Crusher to gain Pulaski, and then to get Crusher again. So we were kind of used to the cast changing a lot. And the idea of losing the captain in this way and him becoming this villain, and Riker takes over, it just seemed like such a natural progression of the show. I just, and then Shelby, who was like a great character, and she was set up so well, and she was set up in a way where you just believed, yeah, she's going to join this crew, and there's going to be this friction between her and Riker all the time. Mm-hmm. And this really got me excited about Star Trek in a way that I don't think I ever was. I mean, in terms of Next Generation, I mean, it was just fantastic.
That's a really great point. I'm trying to remember. I mean, it was such an impactful thing. You're right. That cliffhanger was a first for us as far as Star Trek goes. And what was the first like TV cliffhanger that you remember? Just out of curiosity, as a side note.
I mean, there were a few others. I mean, there was obviously Knight Rider.
Knight Rider did it. Did they season cliffhangers?
They had those. They had their cliffhangers, but we were much younger. We were just kids. I mean, we were in high school. At least I was in high school when Next Generation hit. So I actually remember, whatchamacallit, what's his name? Roger. You know, calling me over the phone, like, after the episode aired, like, Admiral, what the hell?
What grade were you in? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember. It was before I met you.
Yeah, because I came in around season 4, season 5, I think.
Right, I was already there. You were a season 4 edition. I was there from the beginning, and
you're still there.
I'm still there. The last remaining original cast member.
It's true.
Yeah. So it was, television was just very exciting at that time. War of the Worlds was another show that was running, what Paramount was putting out, and they had just finished killing off half their cast.
Oh, jeez.
Highlander had amazing cliffhangers where they would kill off people that you're like, what?
I know. I was trying to, you know, it's funny because everyone's really excited about Game of Thrones, of course, and
nothing.
I know the one thing that everyone remarks about is how like the show just like, you know, it's a bloodbath of characters, and it is a high blood count on the show.
Oh yes, but it doesn't compare to what we watched.
Yeah, it's true. Highlander, every episode someone died because they had to. It's like you know, characters that you loved or the characters that you hated. I wanted to tell you, last night I went to dinner at a place here called McLeod's, and the employees have a shirt, you know, with the logo, and on the back it says there can be only one. It's a direct reference.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was great. The food was delicious. I had bangers and mash and spotted dick.
Was it a haggis?
No, there was no haggis on the menu, but lots of great whiskeys actually, lots of great
Oh,
scotches. So yeah,
it's a Scottish spice.
yeah, there can be only one.
The only one. We're going off. We're going off track here.
Yeah, we're coming back to the thing. So I mean, I do remember just being blown away by that, and that was a long summer. Um, and I've watched this episode numerous times since then, and it's just such an intricate episode. But I think my favorite scene is the scene between Guinan and Picard in 10 Forward. It's actually one of probably my favorite scenes of Star Trek in general, where he's sitting with her and they're talking about how I just love that he toured his ship. Like there's this like, a lot of these things that aren't seen on screen, but through the dialogue that we learn, like Captain Picard is like in this situation that looks dire, and what he decided, and he's hopeful, he's optimistic, but he walked his ship. It was just like there was almost a sense of like maybe he understood what was happening, and there is a little episode. Some people might think it's cheesy, but I like the little foreshadowing in the dialogue where Guinan said, well, don't captains usually tour their ship when
It's
there's
a hopeless battle.
Yeah, it's a hopeless battle. And he says, no, Nelson, Lord Admiral Nelson, did that before Trafalgar. And she's like, yeah, but he never came back.
Which is amazing that Guinan knows this. I mean, it's not even her own history, but she knows the story of Nelson and Wellington at Trafalgar. I mean,
it's funny. Gary brought this up. You missed that episode, but this season where Dr. Crusher gets kidnapped, and how the character Finn.
Oh, about George Washington.
Right. The character Finn, seems to know a lot about George Washington, and it is interesting. Like, why is human history so well known, or so well known and so fascinating? And obviously the show takes a human-centric kind of standpoint, because humans are a big part of the United Federation of Planets, humans and Vulcans. But I think I'm not surprised at all, because Guinan lives among humans, and so
yeah. Oh yeah. No, I totally agree with you there. Yeah, for sure.
But that
is a great scene. That is a great sequence, and it shows the the fact that she's just sitting there in the corner, almost as if she's just waiting for Picard to come in.
She knows, right, that he's gonna come and see her. It's true.
And it's a wonderful scene that play, and in the second part, there's a wonderful counter scene with her and Riker, which
I will not talk about. See,
right.
I'm having trouble because they're both blended into my head. So you need to be the.
Well, what happened to me is, I have it on Blu-ray, and this is interesting, and it's something actually I remember complaining about at the time. Because I don't buy the seasons. They had the all the two-parters released on Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
So I just bought those, because usually those end up being the better, some of the best episodes. And they have it in a movie format, which is how I saw it. I saw this episode in the theater.
Right. Didn't the Phantasma, or whatever it's called,
Fathom
Events, right?
Right, to promote the season box sets. They had it in the theater, and I saw it on the big screen, which it was an amazing experience, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome.
But the thing is it's funny, you lose the cliffhanger.
Right.
it's a smooth transition. So I was rewatching it, and then suddenly it got to the point where you got to, where they're going to rescue Picard, and I'm like, wait a minute, I've gone too far. So I had to stop.
That's funny.
Because I was like, wait a minute, where's the cliffhanger? And it's so essential, the cliffhanger, because and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but for people our age who grew up watching it, it was really, it's something that has just lingered in the memory. I don't know a single person who grew up with Star Trek Next Generation that did not just remember enduring that summer and not and just in agony as to how the hell they're going to get out of it.
It's a tight spot. Yeah, it's the tightest spot you could put this crew into. I mean, like,
yeah, I mean, the only one that comes close to it, just in that, you just don't know how they're going to get out of it. I mean, not in the danger of the suspense, but Time's Arrow. You're sort of like, well, wait a minute, how is Data's head gonna, like, there's just, it's almost like a Doctor Who one, like a modern Doctor Who, where it's like, wait a minute, how are all these pieces going to fit together? But this one, you just don't know who's going to live and who's going to die. I mean, you almost believe that the whole crew is going to die,
Right. Almost.
And I grew up watching Blake Seven, so I mean, that was a show that lost the title character and everything. I mean, they lost the ship and everything. So I'm used to, like, okay, well, scuttle the Enterprise, and we start off with another crew, and maybe it's just Shelby. And I mean, I don't know.
I mean, you never know what could happen. I mean, it could have been done that we lost the Enterprise and the crew, and the show started anew with another crew, a new Enterprise, or like a post Borg Starfleet. Which, I
mean, the show is called Star Trek: The Next Generation, not Enterprise: The Next Generation. So it didn't necessarily need the Enterprise.
Well, Star Trek. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek: The Next Generation are the two shows that kind of are what I would consider like the Gene Roddenberry, like the Old Testament and the New Testament, if you will, to make a rather inappropriate analogy, because Gene Roddenberry would have hated that probably, but but it is. It's kind of like you have the original series, and then you have the Next Generation, and then from that, you're right, like Star Trek has grown now to insane proportions. It's like Deep Space Nine was a result, and Voyager and Enterprise, and now Discovery, which is on its way. Oh, I have something to show you. We're gonna have a Discovery moment in the midst of our episode discussion here.
Oh no.
I'm gonna show you. I made a drawing, Doctor. Hold on. Let me open this up for you. I don't think you're following me on Instagram. I just followed you.
I just started it. I know.
Went
on to see something Emma was.
I made.
You drew that?
I drew it. It's my first drawing. Thank you. It's my first drawing. My study of the Discovery. There's very limited information about the Discovery, but I thought that would be a cool thing to do. And
that's cool.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, you can see kind of.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know how to use this app. Oh, here we go. So, interesting ship design. You really have to draw the ships, in my opinion, or something, or play with the models to really get to know them.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I think drawing this was a lot of fun. And now I'm kind of the design is kind of growing on me, Doctor.
Well, it was that was one that we're going to use for Star Trek: The Motion Picture, wasn't it?
Right. It was very similar to one that Ralph McQuarrie,
yeah.
Came up with. And then, Doctor, to go even further, just we'll end this Discovery moment in just a second here. But I also attempted to paint it, and so this is not as good as the drawing is, but I also then went ahead and did this.
No, I like it more than the drawing. That's cool.
Thanks. And then we'll zoom in. I'm really proud of the lights.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, so little Starfleet boy
getting to know the ship.
This is how I do it. This is how I remember when Star Trek: The Next Generation, before we had the technical manual and all that, I would draw whatever I could see and try to figure out what it was. So drawing sketches, even if you're not a good drawer, because I'm not very good.
No, you are. You're excellent.
Is a good way to familiarize yourself. So I'm actually kind of getting excited a little bit more for Star Trek Discovery, and I'm excited to see after this episode of Next Generation, where you realize it made me realize actually that Star Trek: The Next Generation showed up with a lot of protest as well. And I didn't know this, but I found out recently that even the original, like Scotty, James Doohan, didn't want to have anything to do with Next Generation. He was actually discouraging fans from watching it, and I had no idea about that. That was crazy.
At the conventions.
I felt like James Doohan. I know what he went through now.
Sure. No, yeah. I think we touched on that on another episode, which is it was, in our Star Trek 4 discussion. Star Trek 4 was the last time their old crew was Star Trek. They were exclusively Star Trek. And certainly with Best of Both Worlds, it just this just took it over. This just took it over the top. I mean, they were it.
So that's what I'm trying to say. Do you agree that like this is the point in Star Trek: The Next Generation where they like come into their prominence, if you will? I guess it's like I think
that the
like you're locked in
cliffhanger, just sort of something about if you're not vested in the characters, then the cliffhanger is meaningless. There's no inherent value to it because you don't care. And I think the reason that everybody was so vested in this cliffhanger, the reason it made such an impact, is because I think it was the moment where all of us as fans suddenly realized how much we were attached to this crew and the ship, and certainly the Borg. We can't discount the fact that the Borg was really the best villain that we'd seen come out of The Next Generation, and that was new. That was inherently new to it, because obviously the Romulans were borrowed from before. The Ferengi failed. Now we have the Borg, and we're really seeing something unlike. I mean, really, it's a threat that you can't even imagine Kirk overcoming. I mean, the Borg is presented, especially in this episode, is, it just seems unstoppable. And then when you see Locutus come out, and you're like, oh no, you realize that this is a whole new ball game that classic Trek fans that maybe were holding out on Next Generation and the new fans of Next Generation had created. They just sort of came together, and everybody just had to admit, like, what is going to happen? I mean, it's a phenomenal episode, not only in the premise but just in the writing. I believe it's Michael Piller who wrote the episode, and I'm going to talk about my favorite scene.
Okay.
Yours is the scene you pointed out was great, and I do love that scene as well. But my favorite scene is the one where Riker is sitting with Troy, and he is talking about Shelby.
Oh, that's a great scene too. Both scenes are in 10 forward too. Gosh.
Both scenes are in 10 forward.
Yeah, 10 forward's a great place.
It is.
Anyways, go on. Sorry.
It is. It's one of the best sets they ever built.
It's true. I want a 10 forward lounge in my neighborhood. I don't know how this can happen, Star Trek, but we need 10 forwards in every neighborhood in the United States.
I mean, it's almost to the point where now every Star Trek ship-bound show, I believe, to be successful, has to have that equivalent. I mean, Enterprise, the show Enterprise had, they had their commissary, which they would use, not as great effect as 10 forward, but they had it. I don't think Voyager had a commissary.
They had the mess hall with Neelix. I think was like Neelix was
he was the cook.
Yeah, he was the cook, but he was like the Guinan. He wasn't. No, there's no Guinan. There's no Guinan. There's no other Guinan. Sorry, I rescind my statement.
But the scene where Riker is talking about Shelby, and he's saying that why is he still there? Why is he still aboard the Enterprise?
Right,
Why is he passing up the commands? Shelby is reckless and this and that, and he's like, I used to be that way. I like that about me.
Mm-hmm.
And then Troy responds with that pat, psychologist answers like, well, how do you feel about it? And all this. And then she says something like, well, you've gained a lot of things. You're wiser, you're this, you're that. Then she goes, you're seasoned. And then Riker goes, he just kind of like, seasoned. What a horrible thing to say to a man. And I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard when I first saw it. And I just recently had at a job fair, I had a sit down with like a headhunter, and she was looking over my resume, and she said, well, for someone like as yourself who's mid-career. And I was like, I had a Riker moment. I was like, but that shows you that the episode taps into something universal. It's an episode that can be appreciated by people who are not necessarily into science fiction. Even though you have this almost demonic force that's about to obliterate the Earth and all that stuff. The episode makes time for these little moments. Riker, struggling with his career. Picard, touring the ship, which is, I don't know about you, but like when I know I'm leaving a place, I kind of do a little tour.
Oh yeah, no, it's
the building.
It's true.
I mean, the little nooks and crannies at the Apple Store or something, where you used to. I mean, I'm sure you did it.
The Apple Store, not
WTMI,
so much.
No, WTMI probably, and Beethoven.
When I worked at the radio station, I certainly felt a lot of just to clue the audience in. Oh, Trekker Prize is here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to Wolf. Welcome to Wolf 359.
Welcome.
Oh boy, we are already there.
We have engaged the Borg.
We've engaged the Borg.
Are you already recording? Are you already recording?
Yes, I am.
Oh, perfect.
I've got your notification, so yes. So this is for episode 1.
Yeah, we're still talking about Best of.
Oh my god! I just got to really just like a blast to the screen.
You missed the Doctor's earlier presentation with the Borg he had on his altar over here.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see. We've got Locutus
and Captain Riker
over here, and Riker, yes,
and wow. Captain Riker.
And there's more Borg around here. They'll be coming up later.
Hang on, I have something too.
Yay! More props. This show's always better with props.
We are engaged, the Borg.
Yes.
Nice.
The Enterprise D.
There we go. There we go.
This one won't so to separate, but still.
There we go.
I just realized, Doctor, earlier, didn't you have the Enterprise D up as well?
Yes, I have a much smaller scale.
You found her.
No. This is the Micro Machine one. The metal one.
I remember those.
Yeah. I have another Enterprise that I have yet to find or rediscover. So we were talking about about favorite moments in the episode.
And I said my favorite moment was the after Captain Picard tours the ship, he arrives in 10 forward and has that moment with Guinan. And then the Doctor said his favorite moment was the discussion between Troy and Riker about Riker being a seasoned person in his career. And then he was relating it to a personal experience that he just had with a recruiter or headhunter who said, "Oh, you're mid-career," and it just dawned on the Doctor that he's seasoned. And then, but Gary, we were talking about how like the show can relate to anyone. It's just not just science fiction. And in these moments, when you have a situation like with Riker feeling, older, that's something we all will relate to. You're the youngest among us, so you have a ways to go yet. Your new career, but the Doctor and I are both mid-career, and so it's true.
You're Shelby, man.
Yeah, you're Shelby.
But unlike Shelby, I'm not eager to take over Starfleet, boy. So I'm going to remain as a ensign.
You're too step aside, Starfleet boy. You're too casual and too informal.
You're in my way.
You're in my way, Starfleet boy. All this, you've passed up all these commands. But I still liked Shelby when she actually was recalling Shelby when she came on, and I guess it was because I was so much younger and like that spirit was there. I kind of was like that as a young person. Shelby was who I kind of agreed with her. I didn't like her attitude and the way she came across, but she really did put a little bit of a fire under Riker's butt and kind of got him to, wake up a little bit from being comfortable, which he references in that scene. But I was just telling the Doctor that, like, and we were just talking about this, but like, much like how Picard tours the ship, I think many of us do that when we know we're leaving a place, for example, like a home that we've lived in for a long time or a job that we've had. You do the whole like this, like, look at everything.
Goodbye to the current situation, really.
Right. It's a very human thing, and I think it's beautifully rendered in this episode. So, what was your favorite scene of Best of Both Worlds Part 1?
Wow, there's so many.
Gary has trouble deciding on what his favorites are.
I do. Ask me who's my favorite captain, and never will be able to give you an answer.
Well,
no, I don't know. I think I just have aspects of the episode that I really enjoyed. And we talked about Riker. I mean, you talked about Riker and the whole situation that was Riker dealing with. Actually, I made quite a few notes when I was watching. So. Riker not being ready to go to move from the Enterprise and get the commission, get the ship that they tried to assign to him, the Melbourne. Although we know later on he became a captain for the USS Titan. But the whole his problem that he was dealing with. Okay, why should I leave the Enterprise? I mean, I'm happy here. And basically, he was happy in one position, in that moment in his life, and he didn't want to change it, which is kind of okay. But then you have other people like Picard and the Admiral that they just, okay, if you just stay here, you're gonna waste your talent and your abilities to become a captain and become someone else, a better person of yourself. That's how they thought. But then there's Riker, who knows himself, and he really enjoys being himself, the current himself. He just don't want to change. Just like, the Doctor don't want to change in the last episode. I'm sorry if it was a spoiler or not, but but yeah, when he says the 11 Doctor said, okay, I always gonna remember who I was, and then you will still have to change. But then Riker doesn't want to change, like our 12th Doctor doesn't want to change. I know, just making old timey-wimey wibbly-wobbly conversation and crossovers here, but
that's it. Well, I mean, really good actually, because change is something that I think for me, I know philosophically that one of the constants of the universe is change. Like, it's constantly changing. Like, as we're speaking, there's things happening that are, the only way to describe them is change. And even we can expect in our lives to see changes in the way society is. We can expect to see, technology arrive that changes the way, we live. Like, all it boils down to is like change is a constant, right? Like a constant of the human experience. So why are humans so resistant to change? What is it about having a great thing, like a great situation, where you want to make it last forever? And is that what Riker is struggling with here? Is he struggling with the idea that, like, is there that's a really good question. I don't know. I'll say this about, since you brought up Doctor Who, the Doctor on our show,
time traveler, sorry.
The Doctor on our show no longer engages with Doctor Who's fandom, so we can't talk to him about this. He has no opinion on it. But the 12th, the 12th Doctor not wanting to change, to me, is not. It's kind of like it's been done every time. Like, this is what he's. Are you taking your headphones off and leaving?
He already did.
Oh no. It's kind of been overdone on Doctor
Oh,
Who.
there you go.
Oh! He brought... You have to say something. You have to say something.
No, I heard the 12th Doctor, and suddenly he's
Hello, I'm here to save you from the Borg. I can't do Peter Capaldi.
knocked over Locutus, and
Hey, the Peter Capaldi figure is very handsome.
it's it's more detailed than this because it's bigger, and yeah, it's a very good figure.
Wow.
I think it's character options. Character options. They make excellent Doctor Who figures, I have to say. So,
Comic-Con of figures for the next generation that look amazing. Anyways, go on.
This is interesting. The argument about change, because I see it a different way, which is that. And it seems to be a recurring theme with Star Trek, because obviously you have Kirk in the original series. In the movies, he struggles with off and on with the fact that he said yes to change. He became an admiral, and he was not happy. And you even had Spock say,
right.
You had Spock say, if I'm going to be so bold, it was a mistake to accept that change, to the promotion. Riker obviously stays for the rest of the series, so he, says no to the change. And then in Generations, which is a movie that is all about being comfortable and not changing and change and all this stuff, what do you have? You have Kirk telling Picard, when they offer you the admiral's chair, say no. Stay where you are.
Ship. It's never going to be the same.
It's never going to be the same. So it's almost an argument. So I think the argument is not to not embrace change. I think the argument is don't let other people tell you when it's time to change. You are the one who knows when it's time to change, not others.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate.
And books like Who Moved My Cheese and all that stuff. I worked somewhere a while back where the new incoming director bought Who Moved My Cheese for everybody. That's a bad sign, folks. when your new boss buys that book for everybody on staff.
Oh, geez.
Your boss is not the one who tells you when it's time to change. You're the one. You are the ultimate arbiter of when the change is best for you. And I think that's one of the hidden lessons of the best of both worlds.
So, obviously that's a great interpretation. I totally agree with that, and I like that. Wow. I never thought of it that way. I will say that at the same time, though, I think Star Trek does fairly depict both sides of the argument. A person like Riker or Kirk or Picard, I think Picard might be a little different. I think he's ready to retire from captaincy and curate a archaeological museum or even just go on digs or whatever. But as far as Riker's concerned and things like that, you have that one aspect of where are your talents best suited, and for them it's like in these specific positions and where they feel that they're the most useful. And then you have other characters like Sulu, who's dying to get off the Enterprise and have his own ship, and even I think in the Next Generation you don't expect, and it's great that they all stuck together all the way through Nemesis, but even Worf is gone, and there has to somehow be an excuse for Worf to come back. So like, you know, Worf goes on and he's on Deep Space Nine, and if the series had continued, like if there was another movie, we would definitely have Riker and Troy gone from the bridge of the Enterprise because they'd be on the Titan, and Data's gone. You know, in a sense, we have B4, but it's an interesting thing how it evolves in that way. And I love that about Star Trek, the original series. You really got to see a nice spot with the original series crew. You really got to see them throughout their entire careers and to see where they ended up. Like, you definitely saw Sulu get his own captaincy. You definitely saw, like, you know, everyone retire by generations. You know, like Kirk basically comes out of retirement to come and
celebrated Enterprise B.
Right, you know, and he's just been like out of the scene for a while. So I like that, and I kind of wish we had that for the Next Generation. I really want that other movie, that last. I just quote about it today. We talked about it on a previous discussion as well. It's just like, it'd be so wonderful to just get the TNG crew to have like that kind of special on-screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, an on-screen.
There's Star Trek 6, yeah.
Right, like an on-screen follow-up, just not even fan service, but character service, if you will. You know.
Well,
like,
if you think about it, Star Trek Nemesis was some kind of Star Trek 6 feeling. I mean, in terms of the crew is going around and about. I mean, Riker leaving the Enterprise with Troy, Dr. Crusher goes back to Earth, and basically it's just Geordi and Captain Picard with the old crew. From the old crew, actually, just stays in the Enterprise. So there has been some implications of passing and the family going apart, and they going onto their own routes, the different family members, as Picard refers to them. But yeah, I would love to see another movie with them, definitely.
I disagree with I do agree that the film starts setting that up, but I really genuinely believe they thought they were going to come back for one more film to wrap it up even more, because I think the film starts to set up this idea of like, it's almost time to say goodbye to the Next Generation on screen, and move on. But it wasn't a sign off. Like it's not fair. Like I think they set it up with like a huge problem, which is Data's gone, but his like there's all these like. And
you still felt it's they're saying goodbye to each other, but it's not really. It is. I mean, they didn't really want to.
Yeah, we don't even see the Titan on screen, and there's a lot of things that like I think Nemesis is one of my favorite movies. Don't get me wrong, but it's like not the end note. Where Star Trek 6 feels like a real end note to me, and I think this crew deserves that. But anyway,
in a way to tie in Nemesis to Best of Both Worlds, apparently there's a novel called Resistance, which takes place shortly after Nemesis, and it's basically the post-Nemesis crew, and Picard wants to promote Worf to first officer, and he kind of resists that, and they have an adventure where they actually try to turn Picard back into Locutus. And by the end of it, Worf accepts being first officer.
Wow!
Yes,
so
aboard the Enterprise.
So non-canonically, or is it like an official Star Trek novel, or because that's kind of a cool idea. I like the idea of Worf becoming first officer, because they introduced that first officer in Nemesis at the end. Oh no, is that a deleted scene? That's
a deleted scene.
You're right. Oh, I'm confusing.
That's a deleted scene. So I guess they found. Well, since that technically is non-canon, then we can just go ahead and write this novel. It's called Resistance by J.M. Dillard, and so that's a little tie-in with Nemesis from Best of Both Worlds. And actually, Best of Both Worlds just has so many. You can leapfrog from this episode to so many different things.
Well, you have the novel Vendetta.
You have Vendetta. Oh yes. Of course, you have Vendetta. Yeah, it's another good one. But bringing it back to Shelby, I think we need to discuss Shelby.
Yeah.
Who, I I mean, again, we're just focused on the first part of the two-parter. I was totally convinced she was going to join the show, and I was ready for it. I was like, yes. I was a big fan of Shelby. I thought she was a real dynamic character. She was that scene where she beams down to the planet's surface earlier than Riker and Geordi, and she's like, well, Lieutenant Commander Data doesn't need to sleep, so therefore I was already up. And, and it's just kind of like Riker's
having an android on board.
Yeah, right. And Riker's like, walk with me.
But you know what else? I like.
Love that scene.
You know what else I like about that scene? What I loved about it is that it was a great way to show how you can have a constructive disagreement in a sense, because Riker's really pissed off and he takes Shelby aside and she says like, okay, noted. Now do you want to hear my report?
Yes.
And they move, like, she's like, okay, I didn't realize that. I won't step on your toes again. Accepted, and then here's blah blah blah, and I love that part because and later, I know we're not trying not to skip, but he does say, I don't have to like you to like
to work with you. Yeah.
And but I think he ends up liking her. I loved her character. I just, again, I didn't necessarily agree with her approach, but I thought she was an exciting addition, and it would have been intriguing to have her on the show in some way. I mean, what an amazing thing, to think about. Like, the show could have fundamentally changed had they decided to go in that direction, and Picard would have just been this menace that,
I think that would have been great.
It would have been great.
I think I never recovered from my expectations. I mean, that I'll leave that for the second episode. But by the end of it, I thought, really, when you think about it, we haven't had a Riker-centric episode since probably season 2 when his dad showed up. I mean, like, where we really got into, what makes Riker tick. And I think they set him up really well as taking command of the Enterprise, and they showed the crew kind of rally around him, and Shelby, I thought, added great support, and you could see, I don't remember which part this is, but I noticed that whenever they would when they would leave the ready room, I mean the conference room, Data would follow Shelby, or Shelby would follow Data. So, like, you can almost imagine she's already, like, taken to Data like that. Like, they're already, okay, they're kind of like a little pairing right there. Like, they're gonna work well together in hypothetical future seasons. The poker game.
Oh, that was a great scene too. Actually,
you had her at the poker game. You could see the way they related to each other. I mean, I thought Shelby was probably one of the best supporting characters introduced, and this actress who is the daughter of Brian Dennehy, who's one of my all-time favorite actors.
I didn't realize that's her.
The great Brian Dennehy.
Oh, wow.
Sired the great Elizabeth Dennehy. I think that's her name, Elizabeth Dennehy.
Yeah.
And and I thought she was great. I was extremely disappointed that she never came back to the series after this two-parter.
I know, that is a shame. I know that I guess there's a book where she's the captain of her. She does get a
there's
captain
tons of books
about Shelby.
Yeah, I was just reading Memory Alpha, the source of everything, basically. And it says Shelby reappears in Peter David's novel Vendetta as a first officer of the Excelsior-class starship called the USS Chekhov. And funny enough, she reunites with Riker when the Chekhov and the Enterprise D combine forces to hold a newborn invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And then she became the first officer of the USS Excalibur in Star Trek New Frontiers, which is also a novel. And she became the captain of the USS Exeter for 6 months before taking command of the USS Trident. So she had a big career apart from this episode. as it looks like, at least.
Yeah. No,
yeah,
no
the actress at the cons is constantly asked about, does she read the books because the New Frontier books, I mean, there's a dozen of those books, and Peter David wrote them, so they're like, they're some of the best Star Trek books out there, and Shelby was one of the gateways in for a lot of fans, because the whole premise behind New Frontier is that you would have a brand new ship and a brand new captain that I was never seen on screen, with that work. And the only character I think that was recognized was Shelby, who we knew from Best of Both Worlds. So yeah, Shelby's a great character. It's a shame. I think it was a not only a shame, but a mistake to never bring her back.
Imagine if she becomes the next Captain Janeway. I mean, if she becomes like Captain Shelby in Star Trek Voyager.
I would have
Instead of
loved her
Captain
to
Janeway.
be in command of Voyager. I think she would have been better than Janeway, to be honest. But I
accept your opinion, but I do love Janeway.
I disengaged from the Voyager fandom. Thank you.
Oh, you
No,
have a
lost next
singular. You have a singular wit, Doctor. What does the book say?
Are we at the book?
Well, I mean, we can't talk anymore about this episode. I don't think we gotta talk about the next episode. I'm like itching to get to Best of Both Worlds Part 2.
Hang on. Well, back behind the scenes informations too. I can find something.
I just want to mention to Gary. Did you know that the Admiral was the voice of God in Star Trek V?
Really? I didn't know that.
And he's an old buddy of William Shatner.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, that makes sense.
So basically, in the beginning of this episode, when he was in the same room with Captain Picard, they sort of reenact this friendship. I mean, obviously, this was Picard, not William Shatner, but it was somewhat a recall of the thing.
By the way,
like he's in Star Trek again, but he be the captain, but he's not Picard. Not Kirk, is Picard, but that was an interesting scene.
Yeah.
Because the Admiral became like so casual and everything. It's like, oh yeah. Well, I'm too old for Shelby, but yeah, whatever.
Oh, that was a weird.
That was a cool scene.
That throwaway line there, something like, "Oh, just an old man's fantasies."
Oh yes.
Yeah, and I'm like, whoa.
I hate to be the bearer of correction for you here, Doctor, but in fact, the voice of God. No, it says here the George Murdoch played God.
So then, who does he play? Is he just a face, or?
Hang on a second. That's George Murdoch, who played in Admiral J.P. Henson.
Oh, it's the same person.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Today is not my day. Starfleet boy is not functioning on all
behind the
thrusters. All my thrusters are not firing today. Sorry.
That officially says on TrekCore behind the scenes for this episode. George Murdoch was the Godhead in Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, as well as the Doctor in the sci-fi show Battlestar Galactica.
Yes, that's right. That's
Holy
right.
shiitake mushrooms.
That's right.
Oh, good grief! I can't believe that.
You've been. I believe that you may have been assimilated by the Borg.
You see, we both learned something today. That's cool.
Oh, good grief! Wait, he's the Doctor
in Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
In the new one?
Well,
no,
I think it was the classic one.
The original.
Oh, okay.
In the there's an episode where the Galactica is half of the ship is on fire or something, and there's people like in cryostasis tubes, and I remember he's the Doctor, and he has a lot of scenes with what's that hot chick that Starbucks always fracking, Cassiopeia. There we go.
Oh, Cassie.
The original Cassie.
Right, no, I know. I I didn't know this, but he passed away on April 30th, 2012. So, cheers,
Wow.
George Murdoch. He
George
is no
Murdoch.
longer with us. Yeah.
This is an interesting. I was just
And he was
reading.
he was on an episode of Torchwood. For those of you,
Really?
Oh.
yeah, he played the preacher in Miracle Day.
Wow.
Oh, that's the American one,
Oh, okay, I guess so. Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the one that's the one Capaldi was on, right?
Yes, that's the movie. It's the Torchwood movie, isn't it?
Right, like the miniseries or whatever. Right. I never saw that. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the book.
Yay! But, by the way, this won't air for a few weeks, but as we're speaking, San Diego Comic-Con is happening, and Larry Nemesic did a panel. And he's been showing some cool photos on his Instagram account and on Twitter. And apparently, there's a replica of, or a version of, the Star Trek Discovery captain's chair that you can sit in, and there's a cool picture of Larry.
And a lot more. I've been monitoring social media in the last last week actually, because there's a lot of things going on about Star Trek Discovery.
About Star Trek Discovery. So just a little nod to Larry Nemesic, since we use his information so often.
And I know it's as you say, it's gonna air in a couple of weeks, but in 15 minutes they're gonna be the panel of the panel in Star Trek Discovery panel in SDCC. So
if we get a new trailer today, maybe we can do a little quick reaction to it.
I'm pretty sure we're gonna get one. I mean, it's about time, and it's Comic-Con, so I'm sure they're gonna release one.
Well, they might be saving it for the Star Trek Las Vegas 30th Star Trek: The Next Generation 30th anniversary.
No. They have to give us a trailer. They have to give us a trailer now. It's been a long time.
All right. Anyways, it's fun. This is 4 weeks ago. When this
this might be new.
We're very timey-wimey, wibbly wobbly on Starfleet Boy here. So, Doctor, what does the book say?
Before I get to the book, I just want to point out. Wait a minute. Is it the right? Yeah. I think Crusher was great in the episode as well. You know, she had a very small part, but she's the one that has that line to Data. Why don't we look at this from the mosquito's point of view?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I listened to the commentary on the episode on the Blu-ray, and there's a commentary by the director, Cliff Ball, the Akudas, who are like on every commentary.
That's awesome.
And they had the actors from Shelby, and he made this curious remark. He said something like that Gates was always trying to get into more of the action, and I think the Akudas asked Cliff Boyle, "Oh, did she go to you to try to, to work her way into that scene?" He says, "No, she went higher. She always went higher." and he called her the moody one. So I think, I don't know. I mean, there's always potential. Like Crusher was one of those characters that just had lots of potential that I don't think was really.
I like to hear. I like to hear stories like that, because I feel as an actor you could be two ways. You could be really invested in your character, or you can be like, just show up for work and do your job and go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you hear stories like this not just from the original series. I mean, George Takei is very vocal about how he had to really fight for Zulu to get more prominence on the show and in the films. And I love to hear that Gates was doing that, and you do see it. Dr. Crusher does get her moments. She has a lot more moments up ahead, but she's a character really. I like that Gates fought for the character. I think that's delightful to hear for me, even if she was moody about it.
Yeah, no, I mean she makes a wonderful observation of Data, and then it's interesting when they get back to the ship. When they get back to the bridge, Worf has that moment where it's almost like you said, he's going to start crying or something. And Crusher's very stoic about it. Really, she's the one that has the closest relationship to Picard.
And that's probably something to say about the fact that I mean, we're not talking about part 2 yet, but she has more to say in part 2 about it. But in this episode, I noticed that like she's the one also that like signals the first appearance of Locutus. She's like Jean-Luc, and then you see him, and then everyone's like,
and everybody sees Locutus,
and the fact that she's on that party too. It's kind of important that she's on the rescue party to go and find Captain Picard. So yeah, there's a lot of cool moments where I really think the show is doing a good job of doing something with the Picard Crusher relationship, even though the Picard Crusher relationship is such a strange, long relationship. It goes through many different things. So yeah.
But I think just about everybody in the cast does very well. I mean, obviously, Picard, I mean, Patrick Stewart as playing the good guy and the heavy by the end of it. I mean, we cannot not discuss, that one single tear going down his face.
That's new.
That's new?
I don't remember. I don't know. We'd have to look this up, but I don't remember the tear in the original. And then I totally noticed it in the Netflix when I watched it.
That's because when we watched it, it was fuzzy.
Oh yeah, it's possible. I don't know.
I do remember the original one when he got the tear as well. I do remember the original SD version.
The tear looked different somehow. It looked remastered.
Dude.
I think it was just cleared up. It didn't remaster a tear.
Gary, with all due respect though, when we watched it originally, we're talking like on TVs that were like this small and fuzzy. VHS quality. So
noted.
Your SD quality is so much better than what we had.
Okay, so in my time, definitely a little earlier, it was visible.
Just a little while ago. Yeah.
Wait, Gary. Yeah. So Gary, you didn't watch this in its Next Generation, its original airing. How did you watch? When was the first time you saw Best of Both Worlds?
Oh gosh.
I should ask. Actually, the question I want to ask is, when did you first watch Star Trek: The Next Generation? How did you watch it? Was it DVD, Blu-ray, or Netflix, streaming, something like that?
And did you in TV?
And did you watch it in the show in order, or did you watch it bouncing around here and there?
Oh no, I watched it in order. I watched it in order from the first episode to the last episode, every weekend. Well, 2 episodes on Sunday and Saturday and Sunday, and
But I remember the TV station was airing them in order. Is that?
They're airing them in order. And the thing is, when I saw it the first time, Best of Both Worlds, actually, I had, unlike if you watch it in the original airing date, you have to wait at least quite a few months. But for me, it was only a week that I have to wait for the next episode. And I remember the anticipation, and every day I was just thinking, it's like, oh, how this will end, how this will end, how this will end. And yeah, it was really interesting, even for that 1 week. But I cannot imagine the anticipation for that long months actually to wait for the conclusion. What's gonna happen with the crew? What's gonna happen with Picard? What's gonna happen with the Enterprise? Come on!
When you watched this originally, did you have a group of friends that also were watching Star Trek? Were you able to discuss it with anyone?
I never really had friends back then. So this is the first time I'm talking about Star Trek since I started the YouTube journey and the website and everything. And I joined to this podcast. This is the first time actually when I'm talking about Best of Both Worlds with someone.
Oh wow!
In Star Trek general. So I'm really feeling privileged by now at the moment. Since I'm joined, I really feel privileged.
That's it. Well, we feel privileged to talk to you about it, but that's really
likewise. Yeah.
So you went through this, did you even talk to your parents about it though? You were watching Star Trek by yourself?
I was watching Star Trek, and sometimes my mother came along in the room and it's like, oh, are you watching Star Trek again? It's like, yeah, and but it's not the same. And it's like, yeah, but there's the same guy playing the same character in the same starship. It's the same. It's like, but it's not. This is a different story. They didn't understand. But funny enough, lately they got hooked on the Enterprise. They really liked Enterprise, and Voyager not really. And none of the other Star Treks here, just Enterprise. They like Enterprise, but yeah, with the original and the Next Generation, they were a bit funny. And when I don't remember particularly when this episode aired, what was their reaction, but in general, I think they just like said, like, well, yeah, he will grow up and he will forget about the whole thing. But I grew up and I didn't forget about the whole thing. Actually, the connection got more stronger. So
I'm mid-career and I still haven't forgotten about Star Trek. So it's like,
You're seasoned.
I'm seasoned here and I haven't forgotten about Star Trek. So that's
no, but definitely since I'm on, let's say I'm participating with social media and I'm doing my my sort of journey on social media. Plus, I cannot thank you enough to allow me to join to this.
Oh, come on! You're totally welcome.
Thing. I know I told you multiple times, but honestly, it's really brilliant and just sharing my thoughts with someone who also have the same thoughts and we have different thoughts and I just love talking Trek.
That's really awesome. We feel the same way. Well,
yeah. And it's interesting that you feel just, I mean, we were just talking about how we waited all summer, but, for you, that week was just like, oh my God, how are they going to get out of it? I mean, the cliffhanger works, man. It's one of the best cliffhangers.
It really does.
Of any series.
I rewatched it today, obviously, before the recording. And funny enough, in my edition doesn't have the two-parter effect, so I just watched the whole thing together as one piece of movie.
Same thing for the Doctor.
Yeah, so it was. I did remember when Riker said fire, and the whole screen went black and to be continued. And
it's actually Mr. Worf, fire.
Well, either way, fire. I remember the scene, and I was like, "Good Lord!" And the end title, and then just thinking, it's like, "Oh, what's gonna happen?" And then in this case, I just like fire. And then we're gonna talk about this later, obviously.
Jonathan Frakes has this like kind of like epic, steely expression as he's saying "Mr. Worf, fire," and you see it again in Generations when the whole situation with Lursa and Beto are attacking the Enterprise. And I just really love the scene where it kind of like, the camera just like kind of swoops in and stops on his face and he says fire, and he does it again the same way he did in this episode, and I thought that was really cool.
And just it's a very not off topic because it's still going to be about Riker. There's a YouTube show called I don't know, it's like a geek courtroom or something, and they discussing things. Why is it this franchise is better than the other one? And it's literally set up in a courtroom, and it's a casual, funny parody style. The thing, it's really good. There was one episode when they discussing why is Riker. One Star Trek fan had a case for Riker not being the coolest first officer, and the other one Riker being the coolest first officer ever in Star Trek history. And they got Jonathan Frakes into it, so he actually went into this episode, and he reenacted this scene over the camera movements and everything, and he set fire, and then even the girl who was against the statement as Riker as not the coolest first officer, she said, okay, now I get it. Okay, drop the case. Riker is the coolest first officer ever. Wow, who you got there? That's like Q Borgified.
It's actually
it's amazing. Everybody knows it's Hugh. I never think
it doesn't look like Hugh, but it looks
it looks like John Delancey in a Borg costume.
Because it's actually not Hugh, because Hugh has that cool implant that is more like a little, it has like a little
obstacle
star pattern that comes out.
Okay.
The Doctor knows this, but Hugh is my favorite, one of my favorite Borg characters, or just one of my favorite guest characters on Star Trek. I was obsessed with Hugh, much to the chagrin of my little group that we would always hang out with, because they hated the Hugh episode and I loved it.
How was it about Locutus? Because he's like a guest character as well.
Locutus is actually badass. No, I think that I should clarify. I should clarify and say that, like, the thing about me when I was in high school, Gary, is that every new episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation became my favorite episode, and it was really annoying to the more seasoned crew members who were patient and waiting and they were more
Use
like
that word again.
they were
What
more
a horrible
like,
thing to say to a man.
they were more like,
boy.
why don't you sit on it for a week before it becomes your favorite episode? Yeah, but I get caught up.
And of course, he says all through high school, but it was all through high school, and then many decades after high school as well. His enthusiasm for every episode of Star Trek Next Generation continues.
Is it the same? Is it the same right now as well?
We
If you
never-
watch an episode, it becomes your favorite again.
What's that?
If you watch an episode randomly, just these days, or even when you preparing for this events, the podcast, you still feel the same? When you're watching an episode, like,
yes, but
yeah, this is my favorite now.
yes, but now that I know the full saga, if you will, I definitely now have favorites that stand out, and then other episodes have kind of dropped. Now that I'm more seasoned, I can appreciate the series in a different way. But yeah, so Hugh has this crazy. I don't know if you can see this here, which is a really cool. I remember vaguely either behind the scenes or something. These are holograms. This like yeah, that's like a I don't know how it works, but basically it's not a lenticular hologram, but a laser hologram, if you will. And so it's actually just a flat piece, but it looks three-dimensional. It looks like it goes into his eye, which is a cool thing. Again, beautiful makeup work.
That's like those action figures, the Visionaries. That's cool.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So anyways, that's not Hugh of Borg.
No, you're right. You're right. It is not. Okay.
But it's a cool Borg nonetheless. Doctor, you still haven't read from the book.
The book.
What's going on in the book?
The book. The book says that Michael Piller says he didn't know how the saga would end when he first sat down to write it. He just began with the need for a cliffhanger and came up with a Borg plot to kidnap Picard after having tried all season long to work up a new story about the cyborg race. Needing a sort of a queen bee. Oh, there he is. That's Piller, right?
That's Michael Piller. It's a great
it's a great shot.
Portrait of him with the Borg set, and you can appreciate it's a little bit better lit, and you can really appreciate how Geiger-esque the Borg set is.
Absolutely. The original idea was that Data and Picard would be combined into one Borgified being.
Holy crap! That's far out. I can't even imagine what that would be like.
I think Voyager ended up doing an episode like that. They combined Tuvok and Neelix.
Tuvix. Yeah, that was the episode called.
Yeah.
I think season 2.
But wasn't 7 of 9... I don't know how I know this because I didn't ever finish Voyager, unfortunately. But wasn't 7
Really?
wasn't 7? I mean, I've seen it here and there. But wasn't 7 of 9 and the Doctor? Didn't they have some kind of merging as well?
No. Oh, that was one. That was once in season 7. I think the episode called Flesh and Soul.
But he's a hologram. That's not the same as Tuvok and Neelix actually merging.
It's gonna be a spoiler for you, but it was kind of a thing because in order to save the Doctor, 7 basically downloaded his program from the holo emitter to her biological circuits or something, and then basically the Doctor became 7 of 9. So she started to act as like she's a Doctor, but it was actually the Doctor in 7 of 9's body. But 7 of 9 conscious was still there, so it was an interesting episode. It was a really interesting episode.
Fascinating. But yeah, but and we'll talk about this in the follow up here. But there is something interesting that Data does do with Picard in the next episode. In Best of Both Worlds Part 2. So I like how it might have evolved from the Data Picard into that other scene.
Oh yeah.
The Data Picard, the Dr. Donna. By the way, I have a note on Doctor Who. There's a public service announcement here. Time ladies are nothing new to Doctor Who. In fact, Romana is a time lady that I've been waiting as a fan to come back on the show. And while I think it is awesome that the Doctor, is evolving and like more inclusive, time ladies are nothing new, folks. We've had time ladies before. Anyways, go on.
The Nemesic touches on the subject that we were discussing earlier, which is just the fact that Next Generation really hit its stride with the summer of 1990. He writes, fan debates raged, computer bulletin board lines hummed, and fanzine letter writers argued, fueled by rumors that Stewart's contract talks with Paramount had stalled. Would Shelby die while saving Picard? Would Picard die heroically? Would Riker be promoted to captain? Would Shelby become his first officer? Paramount's publicity department
ran a little closer, Doctor.
Paramount ran its first ever promotional campaign for a single The Next Generation episode since Farpoint. Ads and radio spots were specially prepared for the season opener. So Paramount realized they had a huge hit on their hands with this cliffhanger, and
that's fascinating because I actually remember now. You just like triggered a memory about bulletin boards. That's how the internet was back then. The BBS is where you had all your discussions and oh wow. That's crazy. That's right.
Yahoo message boards and well,
there were lots of
Yahoo wasn't around then, but they had bulletin boards. CompuServe bulletin boards. But it was just, this episode generated buzz. I mean, I remember coming to school and talking about, like I said earlier, talking to Roger about this, and then it would be something that when you would meet another fan, you would say, you would discuss the cliffhanger. Say, oh my gosh, and that cliffhanger, oh wow, that would be something that I probably discussed with you, like within days of meeting you, and you, Sue, and Ruben, and all of you. I mean, it was just something. It was that cliffhanger was something that just bonded Next Generation fans, to endure that summer, not knowing, was Picard going to die? Is Riker going to be in command? What great cataclysm was going to befall the Next Generation? It's
true. Putting aside my cautious side for a moment and going strictly to the optimistic side, this episode kind of regenerates that excitement that there is going to be a new Star Trek series on somehow, where it's not gonna be on TV. But I'm starting to lose all these attachments to like, you have to pay for it, and it's not gonna be on TV. And I'm actually kind of getting excited to see what the presentation finally is gonna be. And so the optimistic side of me is hoping that the writing is so phenomenal, like this, like where you're just like, oh my God, is there, maybe there'll be a similar type of vibe and a cliffhanger and Discovery that we're all like crazy about. So let's hope that happens.
It's pretty much, I mean, it's one of the things that everyone will always compare to this episode. This is one of the greatest episodes of the entire canon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really. I mean, I think, I know we've had a lot of 10s already in our discussions, but I think this is one that just will forever be remembered. I mean, it's just one of the, this is the 10est of the 10s. Okay, is that a phrase? Is that English even? I don't know. I'm surprised you haven't talked about the music.
I did. I thought I mentioned it in the beginning. No, I didn't. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the music's insane. It's very
Ron
cinematic.
Jones,
Mm-hmm.
that
No,
little electronic choir that you get whenever the Borg.
yeah, that whole thing.
I was waiting for him to do that.
No, the music's phenomenal. But I mean, Star Trek: The Next Generation. We've already talked about how great the music is, but you're right. This was a step up in every way. This episode is a step up from their usual. But again, I'm just dying to get to our discussion for part 2 because there's so much more to talk about. Did we cover everything in the book?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, it just raves about how great it is, which we just did
which
for.
We all did too. Okay.
For like, I think we've been talking more than an hour now at this point.
We really have. We're almost at an hour and a half. We are at an hour and a half. Wow. Okay, Gary, anything else in your notes?
No, I'm pretty much covered everything.
All right, so we decided earlier that this was an 11. I'm actually, based on what you just said, Doctor, I think this episode is unrankable. It's like so high an episode that we can't actually give it a rating. So the episode is our first unrankable episode. It's just timeless and classic and excellent, and it gets better with age, and yeah, so that's my verdict on that one.
I'll say it is beyond ranking because
Beyond
if
ranking.
unrankable sounds that it could also be interpreted that it's so bad it can't even.
You know, there might be fans out there who don't like this episode, and if there are, we'd love to hear from you because so far we've just been doing a love fest, and we haven't really talked about anything.
Are there any flaws with this episode?
I say no, but I mean, I'm open to hearing about flaws that might be in this episode. So please write to us and let us know. Gary, anything else from you? And do you have a ranking, or is it also beyond
This is my ranking? This is my ranking. Nothing else. It's just this episode was just amazing, and yeah, it was just amazing. I agree with both of you. It's unrankable. I don't think I will give. If I would be able to give a maximum, that will be in our 1 to 10 system. It will be at least an 11.
I said the same thing.
You did.
I was like, it's an 11. Yeah. It's. I've never met anyone who didn't like this.
It should be it's a hallowed piece of Star Trek history. All right, guys, let's wrap it up. Live long and prosper, and we'll see you very shortly for more.
In a few weeks' time.
All right, see you next time.